a huge fan and proponent of nitrogen and starter on planters. And I've seen in the last 2 years quite a movement from a lot of you thinking and moving in that direction. But it's not without its pain points. And I realize it well, that anytime you and I stop, whether that's a 30-foot planter, 40-foot planter, 60-foot planter, there's a cost. And the more you and I use, the more times we're going to stop. So at 360s, we're a nitrogen company. And I passionately believe that putting nitrogen on a planter is the sweet spot. We know right where the row is. It's the right time of the season. We know where every seed is. And so it's the correct time to do it, but you and I have to overcome the speed bumps. And one of probably the largest speed bumps is just where do I carry it and at what cost from yield in the center of the planter or the wheel tracks, or even what do I buy to put on my tractor. So at 360, we started at the front of the system at the tractor, and we said there needs to be a much better tank system. A tank system that'll carry 700 gallon, that'll be balanced on the tractor versus hanging elliptical out front or putting on, heaven forbid, 800 or plus gallon in the center of the planter where we have a lot of pinch row effect. So we mounted tanks that are designed to stay within the shadow of the wheel footprint of the tractor. When I went out in the marketplace and looked at options and see that there's a lot of tanks out there that hang outside the duals, over 16.5 feet wide, my stomach tightened. I spend a lot of time on the road in the spring with large equipment. We're spread out 50 miles, and I know what it feels like when we have constant traffic. So, number one challenge was we need to balance the tractor correctly, front axle and rear axle, and then we need to carry enough that we're very, very efficient, and we need to stay in a width that keeps us safe so we come home to our loved ones at night. And so the 700-gallon tanks that we have at 360 have a lot of good features. Let's just dig in and take a look at those. When we first started the project, we talked a lot about where's the best place to carry 7,700 pounds of nitrogen. And we realized there's lots of options hanging off the front of the tractor. There's a lot of wider options off the rear. But the research we did in working through our SolidWorks program, it looked the best to us to share the weight on the rear and the front axle. The challenge for all of us is, as we put liquid on our planters, is to understand how do we get enough liquid capacity on the tractor. Obviously, we can have it in the center of the planter, but in this case, pretty common, you'll see the elliptical 400-gallon tanks out front. It's then understanding the impact, the advantages and disadvantages of having this much weight out front. Obviously, it's going to increase the front axle load, and all of us have had the experience. I've had them myself, and you get in wet conditions, and all of a sudden it becomes very much a detriment because we've taken weight off the rear of the axle. And so, yes, there's an advantage far as it's easy and simple to mount, but the disadvantages start to come down to yield itself. And we talk about pinch rows of that much weight on this front axle. And so we're having our digital pads. In this scenario, we have 4, 2 under the front and 2 under the rear. And then we can look right here on our base unit and see the impact of that and measure it exactly. So we're empty right now in this 400-gallon tank. We're going to go ahead and put 32% nitrogen in it, and we'll see exactly how much weight we're transferring to the front axle. When we look at a 400-gallon elliptical up front, out on the nose of the tractor, and we put 32% in it, we're adding 4,424 pounds to that front of that tractor. That has quite a negative effect on the balance of the tractor itself. And you can see here that we took 3,500 pounds off the rear of the tractor and transferred that to the front axle, and we actually were able to measure at the digital scales 3,426 pounds in addition, besides the liquid itself. When we compare that to the 700-gallon tanks from 360, it makes quite a difference. There, with the 700 gallons, we have 7,742 pounds that we're adding to the overall tractor. But look at the difference in the balance. We only took 900 pounds off the rear axle and only added 658 additional pounds. So this keeps the tractor in balance and keeps us in the streamline of where we want to be. Our 360 700-gallon liquid tanks are designed that they would go on to the 8000 series, and they're aerodynamic. They fit the exact shape of the hood with a lot of room in between the hood and the tractor, so there's good visual lines. If you're using it for side dress, you're going to be able to watch your row and work that way. Plenty of clearance underneath the dual front axle, and then mount it right into the main casting of the frame of the tractor itself. The front is shared with this 4-inch beam coming across the weight bracket. So 350 gallon on each side. If you wanted to put starter in one half and nitrogen in the other, you could. For us, we're carrying 32% nitrogen on both sides. And we streamline the hose and the routing so that my OCD didn't go over the top. I like to have it neat. I like it looking professional. Comes underneath the tractor and joins both tanks and then moves right back to the High Pro hydraulic pump. We have a 2-inch front fill here if you want to pull right up to the ditch bank, or once you're in the field and running, obviously it's being able to be filled right from each end of the planter with the Gator and bringing it right up where you can see it in your sight tubes and you know exactly where you're at. As you can see here in this time-lapse video, extremely easy to mount. Bolt it directly into the casting of the frame there in the front of the tractor low, and then sharing the position here in the front with the 4-inch I-beam, and it goes on very, very simple. So these tanks solve a lot of the problems we have of capacity and efficiency, but it's not always adding more capacity because without question, weight comes along with that. So let's take a look at the 360 Sprint system and understand some new technology that really adds efficiency into each of our farming systems. Out of our 3 planters, one of them stops every 26 acres, one of them is stopping at 42 acres, and so I have a neighbor that stops every 26 acres. And he's saying on my 60-foot planter, basically about every 35 minutes, I'm stopping for 10 to 12 minutes. And so as we think about it, the idea that hit us and that wow moment in R&D is when we talked about how efficient we are with grain carts, taking grain away from a combine. It was probably 40 years ago when we got our first grain cart. It was a Parker 600 bushel. I could not believe how we kept a 7720 green cab combine running when we had a grain cart always beside us, and the combine never stopped. I can think of days in the fall when I can go 8 hours. Almost makes you wonder how much I'm drinking. You go 8 hours and never stop once and take a break. And 2 grain carts are keeping 2 combines running at full efficiency. And so that wow moment was, why not? Like we take grain away, why don't we bring liquid too? And now our planter continues on at the perfect speed, positioning seeds in the perfect spot and never stops. Whether it's starter or liquid nitrogen we're bringing, we keep that planter at peak efficiency, and the numbers are staggering. We spend a lot of money going to high-speed planters. And with the Gator 360 system, you can see that we're going to have 25 to 30% more efficiency each and every day. So on a 1,000-acre farm, 2 individuals, your nurse truck driver and yourself, could plant 300 more acres and the same exact allotment of time. And without question, there's good days to plant and bad days to plant. But at the end of the day, we need to get that crop in the sweet spot in about 7 days. So you need to size yourself accordingly. Sizing yourself accordingly doesn't always mean going out and buying a larger planter or even investing in the technology of a high-speed planter. With the Sprint 360 system, we can pick up tremendous efficiency. Let me give you an example in an 80-acre field. For our operation, we're using 80 units of N, 40 on each side of the row, so it's 23 gallons to the acre. Let's use the 700-gallon tank size, which is pretty common in the industry. So, for the 80 acres after the initial fill, you're going to have to work your way back out to the roadside and come down the headlands twice more to finish that field. And at 12 minutes of fill, these numbers start to get pretty interesting. In the Sprint 360 system, you would start with just a 3-minute fill, which is just 200 gallon. Then the Gator would immediately start to fill and catch up with you and to keep you running. The numbers are exciting. When you see a 31% efficiency, so in other words, 3 minutes compared to 36 minutes fill time, there's a lot of acres to gain by the end of the day. And so at 360, we're talking about efficiency, We're talking about using something that you and I already got on the farm, and we put technology to it, and all of a sudden, it becomes very streamlined and extremely efficient. We have yield at the end of the day. Let's go into detail and talk about the Gator system itself. We took the John Deere Gator. So whether it's an 855 diesel or an 825i, we found they both work equally well. And we started to add technology to it. First thing we did is simply remove the bed. It's a matter of 3 bolts. And then we added an extra axle with a frame that fits right on top of the Gator frame with a 300-gallon tank with baffles. And the 300-gallon seems to be in our sweet spot. It's something the Gator can handle very, very efficiently, even in this soft soil that we have here. No problem keeping up a planter, even a high-speed planter. It can keep up at 10 miles an hour. And so we have a 3-inch load, and it comes in. And then, of course, we have a 2-inch pump underneath. And all the controls are right here at your left hand of your operation. And so we have it designed so no matter which way the wind's blowing, you and I are not in the dirt. We have a funnel on each side of the planter, left and right. And if a little common sense, you know which way the wind's blowing, you either hook up to the right side of the planter or the left side. So once you start your pump, you come in and hook with magnets. We have 1,100 pounds of magnets that will come in and hit a steel ring inside the funnel. We come in and connect, and then we back off. And you have 32 inches of travel back and forth while you're hooked and pumping. When you get ready to disconnect, you roll your Gator up a little bit tighter, you hit your magnet off, and you're gonna disconnect. And at that stage, you're gonna loop around, get right back in your track, and you head back to the nurse tank to load the next 300-gallon. And you have about 15 minutes to more than take that time. So we've now put 300-gallon on the tractor, and so he's gonna have another 17 to 20 acres to plant, depending upon the level of nitrogen that you wanna put on. And he's gonna get that planted out. You're gonna go load, wait a little bit, get yourself a drink, head back. On the Gator itself, we reposition the rear tires and the front tires with spacers, so we're on a true 60-inch spacing. That puts us right in the center of the row of either 30 or 20-inch rows. We're running on the wing tire, and we're never having a pinch effect. We always have 2 rows under the Gator, because we all understand what a pinch row effect looks like. And we can see in the center of these planters, year in and year out, 10 to 12 bushel. No matter what conditions we're in planting, you can pick it up with the yield monitors. So we're able to go either on the left or right side of the planter, and we're able to come back and forth, and we stay off the corn, and we keep compaction to a real minimum. So it's a very quick system. It takes about 2 minutes and 56 seconds, just a little less than 3 minutes. You can pump 100 gallon a minute to load either into your starter tank or into your tractor tanks, and then you're doing a disconnect and come back. The beauty of it is we keep the planter running and we keep the weight very, very low throughout the whole system. So as you and I think about using the planter as a nitrogen applicator, what is the cost to this compaction in the center? So to measure that, we had an R&D department here at 360 Yield Center build us a technique that can measure down to 18 inches in depth what the pressures are. So this particular unit has a 2-inch cylinder on it. It's able to go 18 inches in the ground with a 3/4 inch point, and it's at 1,000 hertz. Or in other words, 1,000 times a second, it's measuring the pressure at the top of that cylinder, which then in our software relates to pounds of square inch of force on this tractor. It has the ability, it goes through a program where it moves to 8 settings per set. So it's going to probe there where you see it. It's going to come up. It's going to move back 3 inches. So it's going to create a 3-inch diamond point. So we don't have an effect off the 3/4 inch diamond probe. We want to get as accurate as information as we can. And using this technology, we will go ahead and measure the impact of that weight on every tractor tire. Front, inside, and outside dual, rear, inside, and outside, and then the 4 high PSI tires on this 1775. Let's take a look at the data on a planter wing tire with the 360 Sprint system coming in right behind it. First, let's take the 360 Sprint system in the Gator with 300 gallon of fertilizer in it. And you can see with the low PSI tires and flotation tires, there's little to no impact on the soil. But when we take just the planter wing tire across, immediately we start to pick up the yellows, the oranges, and the reds, and we can see the compaction that goes underneath it. And when we bring the Gator in behind it, there's little to no change. And I realize that there's other ways to bring liquid onto planters. One of those would be a large tow behind cart. So this 1,600 gallon wagon with 4 large tires following in behind the planter tires created quite an impact and compaction. Without question, we have a yield impact and a negative situation here of this dark red. Now, let's go back and say, how do we transfer this liquid to keep these planters extremely efficient and lightweight? The 2-inch pump pumps in a 2-inch line right up here to a shutoff valve that's a 12 volt. Right here on your hand controls, you can turn that on and off. And then we have a check valve and the actual end of the boom itself to keep the spillage to a real low minimum. The planter then has a check valve. It's impossible for any liquid to come out the back. When you get ready to leave the field, your tender driver is going to go ahead and leave when he gives you the last 300 gallon. As you finish that field, you're going to go ahead and hook the Gator with the boom, with the extendable hitch out of it, right into the center of your planter and travel to the next field without having to worry about waiting for a driver. The 2-inch pump has the ability that we can swing it out, so there's no problem in servicing it. You can see here the 6-horse motor, so we can go ahead and add gasoline and do any kind of service that you want. And it's just a simple matter of putting it back in and sliding it in. If there's something that gets me really stressed, it's when you buy a new planter like this 1775, and then you start to plumb it and put the manifolds on, and you get a lot of leaks and you get a lot of fittings problems. So at 360, we designed a simple manifold system with a 2-inch fill line coming from the Gator, and then 2 1-inch lines with the nozzle body and the push connect 3/8. So front would be the 32% nitrogen. The rear 1-inch here would actually be the starter going down into the actual row unit itself. And so it becomes very streamlined. With a simple bracketry system and some nice fitting and clamps, we get it very, very streamlined and make it look like it's supposed to be there. At 360, we mounted a hydraulic high-pro pump, feeding it with an inlet of a 2-inch, out pressure line with 1.5 inches, with a frame mounting system right to the casting of the tractor for easy mounting. Then the pressure comes right down the 1.5 inch solid tubing that's mounted very carefully to the wishbone and right back into your manifold system. So with the 360 700 gallon tank solution, we were able to put weight on the front and the rear of the axle of the tractor, and then bringing in the Gator system, where we bring spoon feed the right amount of weight as we go evenly across the field, hits quite a home run.